in particular, like since you do mention like the Crusades and everything, traditionally a lot of people say that's kind of what led for the foundation of how widespread Christianity is, like to this day. And so even though the practices themselves may not have been 100% in line with what the text says, what they claim is that, you know, they were told by Jesus, by God, by some sort of holy being to act accordingly to what, you know, what eventually led to the widespread Christianity now. So without them doing that, we may not have the worldwide influence of Christians that we do.
According to whose history?
We all got an opinion, but can you back yours up? Where you get your sources from? Hope that don't got you stuck. We gon' check you and your understanding of knowledge. That's regardless if you finished school or went to college. Not everything is as black and white as it seems. This show here is about expressing what you mean. Whether you get canceled or whether you get played. Welcome to the Cancel Podcast with Elliot and Jay.
So, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Cancel Podcast, where we aim to challenge one's own thoughts by bringing unique, creative, and potentially divisive topics to the table for discussion. As always, it's your boy Darius, aka Jay Sarad, representing Legendary Media Group. And today we have three guests, Mr. Phil Milano, Antonasia Jones, or also Nasia, as well as Dave Jordan. And so today, what we're going to actually discuss is theology, structured religion versus spirituality. So as we get started, I kind of wanted to hear from each of you and kind of say, you know, kind of learn what made you interested in this particular topic. And anyone, you can feel free to go as well.
I'll go first, man. I thought the topic was interesting because, you know, like I noticed ever since I was young, I grew up as a devout Christian, but I noticed ever since I was young, I noticed the perspectives started to shift, and it seemed like it's starting to shift more toward spiritualism in some sort of aspect. But I'm super grounded. And it was just real interesting to me to get everybody's thoughts and like kind of pick their brain on why people believe what they believe.
Okay. Nasia, Phil?
I'll go. I would say I was interested because maybe about a year and a half ago is when I really started to deep dive into religion and Christianity. That's when I kind of went on my journey of who is God and wanting to know who God is. So I kind of took it from both angles of both spiritually and religiously, and kind of just came to this place of seeing God as who he is, as spirit. God is spirit. So you have to come in from kind of both angles of religion and also spiritually. So it kind of just drew me into that, just like some people go one side or the other side, but in reality, in knowing God, there's usually a combination of the two. At least that's what I found.
Okay. So for you, it definitely does kind of like intertwine a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking, prior to last year, what did you identify as before? Like, were you always like Christian, but now you're just deep into it, or was it something else?
If you had asked me, I would have said I was Christian, but I was not. I would have just put the label Christian by not actually being a Christian, because I wouldn't know what else to say, because I went to a church and they said Christian because that's what the church said. It's like, all right, so that means I'm Christian, even though I wasn't doing any of the stuff. I wasn't reading Bibles. I wasn't really even going to church very much at all. So okay. I think actually I might have been closer to agnostic, if anything, versus Christian.
Okay. And for my background as well, I consider myself agnostic. As David knows, since we are like cousins, grew up in a Christian family, Baptist church and everything. And at one point I considered Mormonism. Didn't go through with that, clearly. But yeah, I actually identify more as agnostic too. So that's kind of interesting. So we'll definitely tie that in. Phil, what about you?
Pretty much I feel like I've when I look back on my life, I have always been trying to define what it is I was believing in, you know? So, and especially lately, these past few years, I've come to really redefine the way I approach a spiritual life, or of just a life of getting to know myself, and of course, it all stemmed from wanting to figure out what is religion before, and you know what was truth and what was real, what wasn't. I got really caught up in that search, and I realized that it defined a lot of my life in the way I approached relationships, and defining what I want to do with the rest of my life. But now I've come to a peace with a lot of that, which has like reverberated into a lot of peace with everything I'm doing now. And I always feel like there's more to know. So I wanted to see what I could learn from being on this discussion.
Okay. I like that too. So overall, your journey is more about growth and like understanding. It seems like. Okay.
100%.
Okay, I like that. So what I'll do is I want to tie in some definitions that I came across, see, if all of you like agree, if you guys disagree, and whatnot. So when referencing the Merriam-Webster dictionary, religion is defined as an organized set of beliefs, ceremonies, and rules used to worship a god or a group of gods. And then for spirituality, the best one I found was on Wiki, so I use Wiki for this one, was an individual search for ultimate or sacred meaning, purpose in life, as discovering one's own inner dimension through personal growth, religious experience, and belief in a supernatural realm and or afterlife. So what are your thoughts on like those definitions? Like, do they speak to you? Is there something that you can agree with, or do you disagree with them, and why so?
Well, for me, as a Christian, I define what I believe is my relationship with Jesus Christ. So it's not so much super traditions. It's not so much me looking at like everything is, I'm so religious. No, I'm just trying to be better in my walk with Jesus Christ, and I'm trying to walk more like him, so because that's what I believe saves you is Jesus Christ. So it's a lot of people that say they're Christian and do just whatever, you know what I mean? And they don't really have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And it's like, look, it's a lot of people that could claim to be Christian, but they do a lot of bad things. And that's, you go throughout history, and that's kind of what they use. They go back to the Catholics, and they go back to like the wars, the crusades, all of that stuff. And it's like, were they acting anything like the Bible told you to act? Nah. So clearly their relationship with Jesus Christ is not what they said it was, and it just give everybody a bad look.
Okay. And one thing I want to bring up too, 'cause, like, since you do mention like the Crusades and everything, traditionally a lot of people say that's kind of what led for the foundation of how widespread Christianity is, like to this day. And so even though the practices themselves may not have been 100% in line with what the text says, what they claim is that, they were told by Jesus, by God, by some sort of holy being to act accordingly to what eventually led to the widespread Christianity now. So without them doing that, we may not have the worldwide influence of Christians that we do.
According to whose history? That's like my biggest question. According to whose history? Because they would tell you that they brought Christianity of Black people. Nah, Christianity was in Ethiopia before them. So, like it's according to who's speaking is kind of my answer.
Okay. Before we go too deep in that, Nasia, Phil, if you'd like to say anything too.
I feel like I mostly agree with the spiritual definition of it all. It's just like seeking the higher power, seeking meaning in life, seeking basically God in a sense. And then, of course, the religious aspect. I see religion as structure. I see religion, a lot of the times religion is a lot of man-made rules. It's a lot of trying to make yourself better. It's a lot of doing a lot of things. And like reading and prayings and all this stuff. A lot of people just trying to put themselves in this position of, oh, I want to be good. I want to look good for God. But in reality, a lot of the times religion isn't that great. Kind of like, as you're just saying with the Crusades, some people, like, that was mostly Catholicism, not necessarily Christianity, that went into the Crusades in the first place. But that's one of the many examples of poor religion versus actually seeking a relationship with God, who is Jesus. I have my Jesus is God shirt here.
No, I like it. So one thing I want to mention too was like, so as both Christians, for you and David, do you guys feel that Catholicism is something different? Because a lot of times you'll hear that Catholicism is an aspect of Christianity. They do believe in Jesus Christ. They do believe in God and a higher power. But some people believe that they are in line, versus others say that they're their own separate entity.
Well, my opinion, they have a lot added on to Christianity when the Bible says you shouldn't add on to the Bible. I can't remember the verse right now, but Google, somebody will be able to pick it up. But you're not supposed to add on to the Bible, and they do a lot of things actually that are spiritual for what you would talk about, like with the spiritualism. They do a lot of things over on that side, and they add it to the Christianity, and the Bible don't say do that.
Well, what are some of like the examples in that case?
I would say
things like praying to saints, praying to dead people, praying to Mary, having idols and statues and all that stuff, having all the rosary stuff. That's definitely not biblical. They basically combined the Roman paganism that was existing at the time with Christianity and then transformed it into its own thing. So instead of having their gods that they had before, the Roman gods, they transformed them into saints. So instead of praying to their Roman gods, they now pray to the saints and say that that's their gods. And then they use them as intercessories to pray to God versus praying to God through Jesus Christ.
Okay. So would you say like they kind of became much more of like a what is it called? Like a polytheistic kind of religion, that what you're saying? Like they're treating the saints as something that is more aligned with God instead of just praying solely to.
Like there's many devout Catholics who honestly believe that Mary is also God. Okay. Mary, the mother of Jesus, also God.
Okay. Versus Christianity, from you and David's definition, is just more so only the higher power, the being, the Holy Spirit, so on and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Phil, I want you to chime in as well too. So like in terms of like what they're saying was the spirituality added on to like Christianity, like what are your thoughts on their interpretation on it, or just those practices alone? Because there are practices that do, as you were saying before, I know from previous conversation we haven't talked about it yet on the podcast, but it's like certain practices do kind of bring you, happiness and fulfillment that aligns with your life. So what are your thoughts on like those kind of practices, and could it be integrated with religion as well?
By the way, I love both of your responses, and I'm learning a lot from what y'all said. So I went through a huge identity crisis with my religion, and then which became just my spiritual practice for a better life for myself.
May I ask real quick too? What were you previously? Like what did you identify as?
I would say growing up as a young kid, it was we went to a Catholic church, and same thing. Yeah, like you said, rosaries, man. Oh, I hate doing that. And then when I got towards the end of high school, I met some friends, and they were a part of what most would say is a Christian group. So we would rather than churches, we would meet at halls or someone's homes, and we would sing, and we learned a particular style of prayer through singing, and in between songs we would say sorry, thank you, I love you, all those kind of good values that I learned through that. But still at the same time we would still go to church, so it was mixed. So I never really knew if it was Catholicism or Christianity, but Catholicism, Christianity, um, and then I started getting really torn up by the the contrasting behaviors between what people were doing and saying versus what what was trying to be taught, the
Like
messages, at
tough.
least.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from a young age I knew that, really, the things that I'm learning from religion, they're 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 there to help me be a good, helpful person on this earth. I knew that and not by words but by instinct. And when people would discriminate about other people for their choices in life, and that would tout themselves as a very religious or very Christian person, um, I felt really disgusted with it, and I actually tried to just throw the whole name away, but still, because they're my friends, that love me, I would still go to church. I would still participate in stuff like that. So I struggled with that for a long time, and eventually I just settled that I was atheist. But then something in me knew that, that there's something, this mysterious force that, that gives life to everything.
Mhm.
And so and then I just followed that instinct to, um, just getting to know myself and getting to know about my life, and which led to meeting good friends like Monica and them, and then I found meditation, and then I still pray before I'll still say, sign of the cross and pray, be thankful for my food. Before I would really shy away from it, or I would, if I did it with friends or family, I would just, in my back of my head, be like, I don't know, I'm just doing this for them. But now I really mean it when I do it. I've found that, uh, even though I don't really take a stance on what I am religious wise, but I see the teachings of Jesus. I see it from a standpoint that the story of Jesus, the way he lived his life and how it unfolded, is a great teaching of, how a human man or woman, can find themselves even in the crazy world.
Right.
And Jesus, just he did it fearlessly. He did it boldly. He did it till his last dying breath of just, you know being the great man he was. So yeah, I don't like it. It's weird for me to say that out loud, because yeah, it's a totally different person than I was. Uh, but but it was very tiring, because I was like really, at, in the beginning I was filled with a lot of hatred towards the hypocrisy I saw. But
Mhm.
I understand now, if you try to find the source of everyone's behavior, you're going to go back to the very beginning of time. So, and now I stopped trying to define that now, and now I'm just making the best steps, while being as helpful as I can.
Yeah. Well, I'll
Yeah.
say, like, even to relate that back to the definitions too, it does seem like with the definition of religion is much more of an overarching structure. Like it's something
Mhm.
that's more of a overall community kind of base versus the definition for spirituality. It does seem more like individualistic, where it's all about like personal growth, personal journeys, and it seems like that's what you kind of went through as well. And I'll say that's why I kind of stepped away from religion more too, was kind of the hypocrisy that I was seeing too from teachings versus implementation. And I know that varies on a person to person basis, but it's like how often do you see it until you're officially like turned off to it, you know? So because it does sound like even though now you consider yourself more spiritual, you still have a foundation rooted in Catholicism and Christianity kind of combined, and that's what kind of like initiated that path. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah,
I also made up
yeah.
that word
It,
interpreting. I'm gonna get a
and
patent.
well, it shaped a big part of my identity, of course. And then, like, I remember, because I would always go with my dad to church, and I remember just like looking at him, and I would pay attention to the way he interacted. Um, and I asked him one day, I was like, "Hey, Dad, are you atheist?" And he was like, why are you asking me that? And he's like, honestly, like, I enjoy going to church, and I love, you know, having you there to be surrounded by community, and I go there for that for you, but personally I don't. And then that's like, that added to the confusion, but also a lot of clarity of of at least, I felt bad for the way I felt, so I at least felt, I wasn't alone
Mhm.
in the feelings that I was going through at the time. So yeah, yeah. Yeah, Christianity and Catholicism, I'd agree that it shaped a lot of my views initially, which led to
Led
now.
to the current path.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just got off the clock, just got on my chill. Called on my homie Brent to see what be the deal. What you trying to do? I'm just trying to heal. Hella floated, never bloated's what I'm trying to feel. Hop in the whip and